What's up, guys? This is EJ Holland with the wolverine.com, and we are back with another official visit preview show. I'm here along my co-host, Ethan McDowell, who just moved to Chicago. Ethan, how's it going?
What's up, man? I'm doing great. What you all can't see is the pile of unpacked boxes behind me. So glad to be done with this move, and I'm back focused on OV season.
Well, yeah, we have plenty to talk about. Last weekend was a little, I don't know, tough to cover. I think there were a lot of guys that came in that were highly touted, but Michigan didn't get any predictions or any commitments. So we'll see if this week brings more buzz. There are a lot of guys to go through. So we'll go ahead and get started here in a sec. Before we do, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. It's a perfect time. We could have some breaking news. Like I said, this weekend could be more successful than the last one. So make sure to subscribe, get those notifications going. And also, if you're not a subscriber to the wolverine.com, now is the perfect time to do it. Get $1 for 2 months over at the wolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1. And that's, again, $1 for 2 months. Get to everything Michigan recruiting, transfer portal, basketball recruiting, obviously the team. You get a great message board community with more than I believe 8,000-9,000 users. I don't know what we're up to at this point. There's thousands and thousands of people you can interact with over at the wolverine.com. So use that promo code UM1. Okay, Ethan, let's go ahead and talk about our first visitor. Kind of like we did last week, we're going to start at the top, offense, and then work our way down to defense. So let's go ahead and talk about on 300 running back Amari Latimer, who you had a chance to see this spring. I know the heavy focus has been on Savion Hyder, but Amari Latimer was a big riser in the on 3 rankings. He's a guy that, again, you had a chance to meet with, fairly quiet. What can you tell us about Latimer?
Yeah, it can be tough to recruit other running backs when you're in the mix and the perceived leader for someone like Savion Hyder, but Michigan has done a really, really good job making Amari Latimer feel like a priority. I got that since when I talked to him, when I talked to his dad. Michigan is doing a great job here. And I mean, they were the favorite in his recruitment early this year. That momentum kind of cooled. And now I think we're starting to see it build up again for the Wolverines after Tony Alford made an in-home visit over there. And, he went to Wisconsin where he has heavy family ties. His brother just transferred there, but he left without a commitment. That was the major hurdle that I was looking for Michigan to get over, and they did. So Latimer has left it open that he could commit at any time, and I am excited to see what Michigan can do on this official visit and if it can solidify itself as the leader for Latimer.
Yeah, like I said, I think Latimer is so interesting because you have the Savion Hyder factor. But one thing to note is Hyder's agent and mentor is a good friend of Amari Latimer's mentor as well. So I think that they would be willing to play together. Let's go ahead, like I said, and stick on the offensive side of the ball. Now, not a lot of skill players coming in this weekend, but we do have some offensive linemen, including a big one, 5-star Felix Ojo, set to come in. And when we look at Michigan's offensive line board, we see a lot of swing players, a lot of guys that can play tackle, but probably project better as interior offensive linemen. Only a handful of true tackle prospects on Michigan's board. Felix Ojo is one of them, and one of the highest ranked ones, if not the highest ranked, the number 3 offensive tackle, the number 6 overall recruit in the country. Now, I had a chance to go out to see Ojo this spring, and he was fantastic. I mean, I think he's a guy that is probably better than the number 1 offensive tackle in the country, Jackson Cantwell. Ojo has better feet than Cantwell. He's really athletic. He's long. He has the frame to add some really good weight as well. Obviously, he's a towering tackle at 6'7", but at 275, I could easily see him putting on 30, 40 pounds and continuing to maintain the athleticism. He's a true dancing bear in terms of his recruitment. He's kind of been all over the place. He's already taken multiple OVs. I believe he's been to Ohio State, Colorado, Ole Miss. So, I mean, he's on an official visit tour. So Texas has long been considered the leader. I do think that Michigan is a factor. They check a lot of boxes for him. Ojo's a high academic kid, loves what Michigan offers on that end, loves the offensive line development. I think that, if Michigan can win this one, it's probably going to come down to whether or not they talk numbers. I mean, that's just kind of the situation when it comes to 5 stars, especially at the offensive tackle position. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be – I think Michigan can win it. They've shown they've, been willing to spend along the offensive line. They did last year with Ty Haywood, but I think it's going to be, tough given this current strategy. If they want to have a real chance with Ojo, they have to get down into those discussions this weekend. So Ojo isn't the only offensive tackle coming in this weekend. One guy Michigan fans don't seem too familiar with that, Ethan, you had a chance to go out to see, is Wilson Zier. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, so Wilson goes to Raven Gap in the northern part of Georgia, but he's from Germany. Grew up in Munich and grew up kind of rooting for Michigan because of the All or Nothing documentary they did on Amazon about the Wolverines years ago. And he made a spring trip. It went really well. He was able to get to know Grant Newsome, who was in that documentary, which was kind of cool to him. And his recruitment's pretty much wide open. He had an older brother that played for Auburn. That staff has, since moved on, and he's visited places like Florida State and has trips scheduled to Georgia, Alabama. He's going all over the place, but he seems very open to Michigan. I'm interested to see where he's at on Michigan's board and just how this OV goes, because he's not going to rush into a decision. He's going to take all of his official visits. He told me he's going to go home and make a decision from there. But he's one of the fastest rising tackle prospects in the country. He's only been in playing football in the U.S. for less than a year. So he's a very intriguing tackle prospect and someone that I could also see kicking inside if they needed him to.
One thing to note is Raven Gap is the same school that produced Marlon Klein, tight end on Michigan's roster, who is also from Germany. So I'm sure Michigan will get Klein involved in that official visit. So
they spent some time together on the spring unofficial visit already, and Klein is one of the main reasons he went to Raven Gap. So there's a strong connection there.
Yeah, definitely. So, Michigan has recruited well. Newsome's been there, so maybe Michigan can pull off a win there. That's a recruit that I think a lot of fans aren't too familiar with. So some good insight there from Ethan. Recruit that Michigan fans should be familiar with at this point is Carter Scruggs. He's long been one of Michigan's top offensive line targets, obviously being a Virginia guy. I've seen Carter many times. Recently saw him at the Under Armour camp, actually out in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, where he was named offensive line MVP. Now, Carter is listed as an interior offensive lineman, and I mentioned earlier a lot of the offensive line board is swing guys that are listed as interiors that can play tackle. Carter, when I first saw him last year, I thought he was more of an interior guy, and I still think he probably projects better at guard early on in his career, but he's really done a great job of reshaping his body. He's better. He looks better and better every time I've seen him. He, like I said, won the OL MVP at Under Armour, New Jersey. I think he can eventually kick out to tackle. His feet have gotten better. He looks more athletic. He looks stronger, more muscular than when I saw him a year ago. He was a little pudgy, as he liked to say, when we kind of laughed about it, looking at the pictures from now, from when I first saw him, and just kind of looks completely different from a physical standpoint. And, in terms of his recruitment, he's pretty open, man, but I think the schools to watch here are obviously Michigan, Penn State, Clemson, and Georgia. I think that Clemson made another good impression this weekend. He has a lot of family members that went to Clemson. Clemson's tried really hard to get him in the class. They almost did in the spring. He decided he didn't want to do it. He went back for his OV. They pushed hard again. He's continuing to make visits. So, with Carter, I think that he really wants to take it into July. He's not going to succumb to pressure from any schools, especially one like Clemson that really goes all in on landing guys early on in official visit season. Like you saw the tides turn with a fellow offensive line target in Leo Delaney. With Carter, he's kind of holding strong, wanting to go through the process. But I still think, along with Clemson, Penn State has long been a contender in that recruitment. He's been to Georgia multiple times. They get the last visit. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Carter end up anywhere. I don't think one team has the true lead for Carter Scruggs right now. Ethan, anything you want to add on that offensive line group before we flip over to defense?
I mean, with Carter, I think it's just notable that if we know anything about Clemson, right, that first OV weekend, they really push. They really try to get you in the class. And they've now tried that twice if you count the spring attempt and then this summer attempt. And I think it's notable that he hasn't committed there yet. I think that means it's truly kind of an open door for Michigan here. And so this OV is huge.
Definitely. So like I said, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. New visitor coming in, J.J. Finch, 3-star defensive lineman from Indiana. He was originally set to visit LSU. Our national analyst, Steve Wilfong, reported that he would instead be visiting Michigan this weekend. Ethan, I know you've talked about him a little bit over on the Fort. It didn't seem like Michigan was a top contender, though they've been in the mix for a while. He's been on campus in the past. What do you make of Finch coming in this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a surprise for me. It seemed like all the Michigan momentum around his recruitment had kind of quieted out this spring. He did visit at one point in April, but there just wasn't that much positive buzz around the Wolverines here. And then he swapped out LSU for Michigan. And I would still lean towards him ending up in the SEC, I think, going into this visit. But Coach Espo's done a good job here. Finch's dad actually was committed to Michigan at one point before going to Florida and then Indiana. So they're familiar with the program, and we'll see what happens. But I'd still lean towards him being an SEC-bound recruit.
And Finch isn't the only Midwestern recruit coming in on the defensive side of the ball. You also have Chicago native Mikhail Blade, an on 300 edge out of Simeon. Now, Notre Dame has long been considered the favorite in this recruitment, and I would still give the Irish the edge. If there is a school that can beat out Notre Dame, it's probably Michigan. USC's in the picture as well, so I wouldn't count them out with what they're doing with recruiting this cycle. But I think Blade is interesting because he runs in the same circles that Bryce Underwood did. Sharon Moore was the Chicago area recruiter before he became the head coach. He's very, very familiar and deeply embedded into Blade's camp. That's a big reason why Blade visited a couple of times in the offseason. I think that, again, Notre Dame has done such a good job. He kind of fits the Notre Dame mold. But, with Sharon personally having a lot of connections in this recruitment, I'm interested to see if anything changes this weekend. Now, the edge I want to talk about quite a bit here is Trenton Henderson, because he's a guy that really moved the needle for me this spring. He's a top 100 prospect. I think he's a potential 5-star level prospect. One service recently bumped him up to a 5-star. And, the thing about, Trenton is he doesn't fit the usual mold that I love in edge prospects, which is that taller, longer prospect like a Carter Meadows. But he is kind of a better version, in my opinion, than Nate Marshall and Derek Moore. I have him ranked higher than both of them. Obviously, it took me a while to come around on both of those prospects. Like with Derek Moore, I wasn't super high on him. And then by the end of the cycle, I had him as a back-end top 100 guy. With Nate Marshall, I wasn't overly high on him. And then by the end of the cycle, I had him somewhere, around the top 150. With Trenton Henderson, I just think he's, that elite level prospect. There are really no question marks for me after seeing him live. He's super athletic. He's explosive. I think he can be an early impact player. I think Michigan has a chance here. I know that Auburn is not really the in-state school. He's in Pensacola, but it's the closest school to him, actually. It's closer than Florida. So Auburn has the local advantage. They've gotten him on campus already. He had a great time there. Florida is involved. USC is another school that's involved. But I think Lou Esposito's done as good of a job as anybody has done recruiting Henderson. But with those types of schools involved, much like Felix Ojo, if you want to land a prospect like Henderson, I think you're going to have to talk numbers. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that with Ojo and Henderson. But, he's a very, very top priority for the Wolverines, and it's definitely not hard to see why. Ethan, anything you want to add about those two edge guys?
Yeah, with Blade, I mean, I think Michigan has always been kind of that fourth most challenger to Notre Dame, it seems like, for months. So this OV is just going to be all about seeing if they can propel past that and, establish themselves as a favorite and kind of build some momentum we haven't seen in his recruitment before. And with Henderson, speaking of momentum, it seems like they built some legitimate positive vibes this spring with him on that first visit. And yeah, got to talk numbers with the prospect of his caliber, but it seems like they have a legit chance.
Let's go ahead and move over to linebackers. And, a guy coming in that I'm super familiar with is Nick Abrams, one of my favorite prospects in the class. He's down to a Final Four of Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon. It has been talked about many times throughout the cycle. It is imperative for Brian Jean Mary to land a high-level linebacker. Nick Abrams is that. Just look at the contenders aside from him, being ranked fairly high. I mean, he has the big programs, recruiting him. So I think with Nick, he's a kid that's very calculated in how he runs his recruitment. Obviously, there's appeal to play in the SEC. I do think Alabama is probably on the outside looking in. I'm more of the two SEC schools. I'm more concerned about Georgia. Oregon is really interesting. Obviously, they have a lot to offer from the NIL front, and they went down to McDonough, his high school, and landed Brandon Finney, who was a Michigan target last year. So he has ties to Oregon. They're willing to play the NIL game. And now I don't think linebackers command the same amount of dollars as maybe a tackle like a Felix Ojo or a pass rusher like a Trenton Henderson. But I do think NIL will be a factor in this recruitment. One interesting thing to note here is Abrams' father, Nick Abrams Sr. He is the CEO of a financial investing firm. So he's all about, numbers. And I don't think he wants to, be greedy or anything like that. I just think he wants to take kind of that businessman approach because he is an elite businessman. So I think he wants to make sure that, his son is also taken care of on that front. Now, with that said, being a CEO of a financial investing firm, he's also very educated, and education is important to Abrams. And when you look at the scope of these schools, Michigan is far superior when it comes to academics. I think that can give Michigan a bit of an advantage here. And I think that's real. Like I said, I mean, his parents are very well educated. He goes to a high-end academic school in McDonough in the DMV. So I do think that, that certainly appeals to Abrams and his family. I think this is a tight race, and Abrams is looking to make his decision in July. He's not the only highly touted linebacker that the Wolverines will get a chance to impress this weekend. Ethan's guy, who he's seen a couple of times on the road this offseason, is Braden Rouse, who arguably is just as talented as Nick Abrams. What can you tell us about Braden Rouse?
Rouse and Abrams are for sure my favorite linebacker targets in the class. I really, really like both of them. And I like Rouse a lot more after seeing him live this spring. He's only been playing defense for one season. He switched from receiver to linebacker as a junior at Cal, big time powerhouse school in Marietta, and blew up. He got all sorts of offers in January from pretty much everyone. And at first, the Michigan buzz around him was pretty quiet. Like they weren't really showing him a ton of love. And then that changed and they started prioritizing him. They got him on campus. And, Rouse even told me they were a little cautious going into that trip because they weren't sure like where they stood with Michigan. And the trip blew them out of the water. And immediately after that trip, they vaulted into that top group and they have stayed there. And now they're in that Final Four with Alabama, Georgia, not Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. The Volunteers have been on him the longest and have remained, the top school, I'd say, with the most momentum. He was back there unofficially. He's going to end his official visit there, scheduled there. And, he maintains that his recruitment is wide open and it's anyone's to win. But sometimes you have to just kind of watch, the actions and follow the visits. And he's been to Tennessee a lot, and I'd give the Vols the edge there, but he's a really good player. And if that'd be a huge win for Michigan if they could pull that off.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the secondary and talk about another one of my favorite prospects here, Kari Adams, who I had a chance to see twice this offseason, including over the weekend at Under Armour Baltimore, where he was named DB MVP. I think when you look at Kari Adams, he checks all the boxes. He is 6'2". I know he's listed at 6'1", came in at 6'2" at the Under Armour Baltimore camp. 181 pounds. He's very well filled out in both his upper and lower halves. He has the physicality. He has the length. Like I said, just everything you want in a corner from a physical standpoint, just by looking at the guy. That's Kari Adams. But he also brings elite level speed. He ran a 10.70 100 meter before pulling up with a minor hamstring injury. So had he not experienced that, he definitely would have ran in the 10.6s. He told me he was even clocking in the 10.5s the first time I went to go see him during practice. So I think had that hamstring injury not happened, his times would have been even more impressive. So when you have that combination of elite size, elite speed, and elite length, you have a 5-star level player, and that's Kari Adams. I think similar to Shamari Earls last cycle, who I also considered a 5-star level player. Shamari had the elite track times, the elite height, the elite length. That would be the dream duo in Ann Arbor, to have Shamari Earls on one side, Kari Adams on the other side. Couldn't throw on those guys. Think about having two fast Will Johnsons on each side of the field. So I think Kari Adams is one of the more important recruits coming in this weekend. Michigan has done a nice job of surging here late. They were a little, late to the game, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. They offered in January and they didn't really become a contender until this spring. They got him on campus for the annual spring game. Now set to get him back on campus this weekend for the OV. They have some work to do. Penn State and Notre Dame, these programs have been recruiting him longer. You have, Oregon's involved. You have South Carolina that just had him on campus for a visit. I'm sure others will try to get in the mix here late as well. But, Kari told me he wants to make a decision sometime in June. And even if it's not Michigan, I think this could be similar to Earls. I mean, they're kind of similar players, but also similar in recruitments. I think that Michigan got in late with Earls and then was able to work all the way to the end of the cycle before winning him over. I think Adams kind of fits the Michigan mold as well. And even if Michigan doesn't get him the first time, I'm not saying that they won't. They could blow him away this weekend. But if they don't, I think he's a guy you can hold out hope for throughout the entire cycle. So, Ethan, anything you want to add on Kari Adams?
We've seen that Lamar Morgan is not opposed to, waiting until the end of the cycle and will spend that time now just building authentic, genuine relationships that'll pay off in November and December. We saw that with Earls. We saw that with Jordan Young. Even if they don't win it now, I think regardless of what happens in Adams' recruitment or with any of these other elite DBs that are visiting, I think Michigan's going to end up with a couple top 100 corners or safeties just because that's the way Morgan operates.
Michigan also set to host 4-star safety Donovan Webb out of Texas. I had a chance to see Webb at the Under Armour Dallas camp in the winter. his recruitment's been all over the place, man. Really hard to read. He's a guy that won DB MVP at that camp in Dallas. His stock blew up. You had a bunch of big time schools after him. And then his stock went kind of back down, and his rankings are all over the place. But he fits the mold of what Michigan looks for at the nickel, kind of built similar to a Jordan Young, I guess. So, in terms of his recruitment, though, like I said, it's been kind of up and down. Like, he just made a visit to Kansas State, but at the same time, he does have big programs after him, like LSU and Notre Dame are supposed to get him after Michigan. Not a kid that talks very much. Michigan has been recruiting him, really hard the last couple of months. He did make it to campus this offseason. When the contact ban came to an end, Lamar Morgan was in Frisco, Texas, visiting Donovan Webb. So, we'll see how this weekend goes. I think that'll tell us a lot more about Webb. And just really quick, Jordan Deck, who we talked about on last week's show on 300 safety out of Frisco Lone Star. So same city as Donovan Webb. He is rescheduling his official visit. And I know there was a report out there that said he was coming in this weekend. He may come in this weekend or may come in on the June 13th weekend. Either way, he does plan to be in Ann Arbor. Those things are still kind of getting finalized, but I do expect Deck on campus, whether it's this weekend or the 13th. Same with Christian Ward, 3-star wide receiver out of Georgia. He's rescheduling his visit. His looks more likely for the 13th, though. So if Jordan Deck does make it in this weekend, I still feel really good about Michigan's chances. Like I mentioned last week, he's one of the better safeties I saw. Tall, long, fits what Michigan looks for, is looking for at the position this cycle. So again, I wouldn't worry too much whether he makes it in this weekend or just makes it in next weekend. Either way, Michigan is right up there with Baylor. I might even give Michigan the advantage in that recruitment. All right, Ethan, are you excited about this weekend?
I am, man. We talked earlier this week off mic, and I think we were both a little more pessimistic about this weekend could go. But as we're talking through it, it's not the biggest group, but it's a lot of our favorite prospects in the cycle. It's a really, really talented group of guys, and guys where, again, they might not be the outright leader for, but they're right there or have momentum building from the spring. And we'll see, man. It might come down to just whether they talk numbers or not with some of these guys. But I do think we could see a little bit more good news and have a little bit more fun on the recruiting trail than we did last week.
Yeah, these are all like evaluations we really like, whether it's Ojo or Abrams or Rouse or Kari or Deck if he makes it in. There are a lot of really, really priority guys that we also are super high on. So it'll be exciting to see what comes of this weekend. And what's also exciting, Ethan? Franchises. Andy Ludicky is here for your franchise needs. Make sure to visit myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky can help your franchise dreams come true. You can give him a call at 404-973-9901, or you can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. He'll set up a Zoom call with you. If you're unhappy with your career, if you're looking for a side hustle, if you've just been interested in a certain franchise, like if you just want to get into Chick-fil-A, if you love going to Dollar General and finding deals, Andy Ludicky can help. And like I said, you can give him a call, the number's on the screen, or you can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Before we get out of here, Ethan, the franchise you need to try now that you're in Chicago is Portillo's, obviously.
I've already been there. It was great.
Yeah, you did go there the first time. You did.
Yeah, when I visited, I went there, got my first Chicago-style hot dog. It was great. My girlfriend and I both loved it.
So Ethan will be a frequent visitor at Portillo's. And if you're interested in Portillo's or Culver's or anything else, again, hit up our guy, Andy at My Perfect Franchise. Like I said earlier, guys, make sure to subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1, $1 for 2 months for daily updates on everything Michigan recruiting. Also like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next week.